Welcome back, Warrior Fam. Yay! Thank you for joining us once again. Another episode of your favorite anxiety podcast. We hope, we know. I think it's fair to say. How many anxiety podcasts can a person listen to? Maybe that's a bad question to ask. Never mind, Warriors.
Don't Google it.
Don't look it up. Don't search for any other anxiety podcasts. We better be your number ones. Oh my God. Okay. We had such a fun interview that we're going to be sharing with you all today. We spoke to an awesome individual. His name is Dominic Velando. And before Abby shares with us a little bit of a recap of our conversation, I'm going to let you all know a little bit about who Dominic is. Dominic Velando is best known for his webcomics about ADHD and for his coaching practice, Hyperfocus Coaching. A problem child straight out of the 90s, his eclectic resume also includes years of martial arts instruction, public and private murals across the country, animated advertisements, and managing an MMA news website. Dominic navigated personal tragedy and death with the help of the ADHD community and currently runs his coaching practice from Golden, Colorado. All right, so Abby, why don't you recap for us a little bit about our interview?
Yeah. So like you said at the beginning, this was a very fun conversation. So Dominic starts off by sharing how a lot of his anxiety came from being misunderstood as a child. He shares a little bit about generational trauma and what happened with his grandfather and then his father, and how some of that anxiety became a learned way of being, and it affected his worldview. And it wasn't until he started interacting with other people with different worldviews that he realized, like, maybe life isn't like the way I've been thinking it is. He shares a little bit about how he went to therapy first at the age of 13, and then later in life, where he was diagnosed with ADHD, depression, and anxiety, and how he was able to build a really strong foundation of life skills to navigate all of these different areas, to really support himself in being able to thrive in the world. He talks a little bit about art therapy and how art therapy really helped him in noticing his self-talk and negative self-talk, and being able to personify the emotions and the voices in his head, which led him to having more compassion and understanding of himself, and how also he's allowed his creative side to explore all of the challenges and pain of experiencing ADHD and anxiety through creating comics. Towards the end of our conversation, he talks about how he realized that the things he resisted really caused suffering for him, and that what his hope is that he can be of service to his community in helping everyone, connect more to themselves and have more of a self-understanding so that they can walk through the world more peacefully.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. It was such a great chat. We know that all of you warriors listening are going to love hearing from Dominic. So without further ado, here's the show. Welcome back, Warrior Family.
Yay.
We are joined by a fantastic guest today, Dominic Velando. Welcome to the show.
That's me. Thank you. Appreciate the invite.
Yeah, we're super stoked to talk to you today a little bit about your anxiety journey. So let's start there. Share with us a little bit about how anxiety shows up in your life.
How doesn't it show up?
Yes.
I think no, seriously. I mean, especially since digging into, I like therapy a lot. It's very helpful. And digging into family stuff and reconnecting with family and like looking at family dynamics, really put a lot of things into context. So, I mean, I think a lot of it has definitely been learned, it's just like even socially. I'm from the Midwest. We're kind of nice. We're kind of too nice sometimes. I think a lot of that does come from like an anxiety of pissing people off, so I mean, it changes the whole flavor of like the conversation. A big one that I've discovered though is that it's really affected my worldview. It wasn't until I started practicing different things to calm the hell down that I started to see the world totally differently. And I started to look at it and realize that, man, I mean, when you have anxiety that is going into trauma, full-fledged like anxiety, fight or flight response, stuff like that. I mean, when you're really, experiencing it in different ways and different levels, it really kind of made me hold back. It's just, there's been a lot of holding back, I think, just in that it's like, not just fear of rejection or maybe, oh God, I'm going to get embarrassed. But I started noticing that sometimes I would look at the way that I engage in, for instance, I'm a creative professional. And there are so many times when I've heard my mind say to me, you know what, everything's going to fall apart. So why really invest in anything? Like, it's not necessarily articulated exactly like that, but sometimes it kind of is. It's like, well, the global elites are going to eat us all. So why would you even go for a degree? And it's like, it sounds crazy to some people probably, but I'm sure to some people it doesn't sound crazy at all.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. I mean, I love how you started this by saying that anxiety is something that's learned. And also it's something that's physiological, right? It's like both the things. And it doesn't matter so much what our caregivers say tell us what to do. It's how they model, how they act in the world. And so if they're constantly people pleasing, then we learn, oh, we should be people pleasers. That's what we should do so we don't get rejected. And I really love how you shared how not only is anxiety learned and it's physiological, but how then it shows up in how what we believe about ourselves, what we believe we're capable of, what we believe about the world around us, and how that impacts how we are as a human being showing up in the world. There's just so many layers to that. I have so many questions, but I guess my first question really is, you spoke about at the beginning family stuff, and you don't have to get too much into like the stuff of the family stuff, but you shared a little bit about how it's like inherited or stuff comes from that. And will you say a little bit more? Will you elaborate on that family piece?
Absolutely. And this part has been made public. My dad's dad was a prisoner of war. Not only that, but he went, I mean, this guy was, from what we can tell, running around in the jungle after he escaped, waiting for rescue, possibly getting into Mortal Kombat. I mean, super heavy stuff. And I didn't really have a serious connection with him because he was gone by, time I was 11 years old or something. But you could really see that it was pervasive, in that, I mean, he was the head of the household and he went through all that traumatic stuff. And then when he came over to this country, he came over by himself, left 8 children. I think at the time it was actually 5 or 6, but and his wife, and then just had to blaze his own trail here and make a deal with the U.S. Navy. He enrolled with the American Navy, and then I believe through that process he was able to get citizenship for his family, and they came over on their own. I mean, my dad tells the story of when he woke up one night in Manila in the Philippines and was told, we're leaving. He's a little kid, and he said, I don't remember, I didn't know where we were going, but I knew I wasn't coming back.
Wow.
And when they showed up, they were faced with a ton of anti-Asian just conflict in San Francisco in the 1950s. And then, that, I mean, it was, there was still another 15, 20 years before the civil rights movement. And they were treated as, in terms of a hierarchy of race, they were the worst. This is how it was described to me. And it's been corroborated by a bunch of people that people were like, what the hell is a Filipino? They already didn't like, colored people. Right. And then they didn't even understand these people. They didn't know where they came from. So the way my dad described his upbringing was chaotic. It was terrifying. It was survival. And then especially when his dad, he was just shut down at a certain point. I mean, he went through all that and he just had nothing left. So my dad had to take over. He didn't have a childhood. He didn't have adolescence, nothing.
Right.
So I later found out that there's this term called hypervigilant. My dad and I are avid martial artists. And for my dad, it was definitely a hobby and a passion, something that he loved. He was able to reconnect with his Filipino heritage through the martial arts, but also this dude really was expecting to get into like a fight with weapons, like out of a movie, on a semi-regular basis. He never did. He wasn't a violent person. But deep down, he was terrified.
Yeah.
Even in spite of all the things he accomplished, he was the American dream. But I remember it was so normal. And then like later on, I was attracting a lot more people and getting involved with people who weren't as concerned with imminent mortal combat and with just, didn't have really the history of trauma. And I started to kind of soak that up and calm myself down and change my worldview. And that really woke me up to, wow, a lot of the stuff about my upbringing and my family structure, it came from just continually and just anticipating bad things to happen.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, all that generational trauma. I mean, how could it not lead to the kind of worldview that you had adopted from a young age?
Mm-hmm.
Wow, what an incredible backstory. Honestly, I'm like floored at the moment. I feel slightly speechless.
Well, I mean, all praise to my family for, I mean, we don't always, it's kind of a fractured family, but at the same time, it's like, yeah, I have so much respect for everything that they went through. And a lot of that stuff I didn't even know until more recently. So, I mean, you can imagine like a lot of that's, I didn't have it articulated to me, but it was there the whole time.
Yeah. Right. Right. It wasn't articulated, but it was there. You felt it. It was, yeah.
I think a lot of our parents in their time, right, depending on their age, like my parents are in their mid 70s, they don't, I don't know that it's like they don't want to share things about their parents or the things that they went through as children. And they're very open, talkative people, but they're also very private people too. And it's like there are certain things in their generation, it was like there are certain things we talk about outwardly, and then there are certain things that are for our family and they don't leave these walls, So I kind of resonated with that thought. But yeah, I want to touch on something, you're talking about your childhood, and in our call, you had shared this really interesting statement. You were like, I remember feeling really misunderstood from a young age and then being severely punished. Can you tell our listeners a little bit more about that experience?
Oh, yeah. And this is definitely something that I've shared quite a bit through my own online presence. And it's really connected me with a lot of people, which is great because, it's very healing, because I felt very alone when all of this was going down, especially as an only child. But yeah, from an early age, I was kind of recognized for my creativity and for certain things that was like, wow, this kid, has he's got a head on his shoulders and he can figure stuff out. And I remember that it did put a lot of expectations on me from way too early an age. Because, I mean, you're my concern was Ninja Turtles and where am I going to get my, when is snack time again? And then it's like I was spending time I was so often not in class. I was either gifted and talented, or because I was so impulsive and I was getting in fights all the time, and I was just a genius of distraction. Like some of the shit I did is still the funniest thing I can possibly think of. When I was a little kid, I'm like, oh, it was so good, because it just like annihilated everyone's attention and brought it back to me. But as a result, I mean, they were consistently from like kindergarten to 6th grade. I don't think I really started chilling out until 6th grade. I mean, they were sticking me in a room for 3 days at a time, 4 days at a time, multiple stints. And it's not an incident, or it's not coincidental. I use that word because it felt like being in prison. It's like you join the general population once they release you into the lunchroom, but then they put you right back. And then they told us, keep your head down and don't talk for an entire day.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you've ever owned a dog, you know what happens when your dog is isolated and told to just lay down for hours and hours and hours. It gets real anxious.
Yeah.
All that energy builds up. And and then I was almost expelled. They wanted to paddle me in front of everybody. This is in like 1995. They really gave me an interesting experience in terms of like the pairing of like recognition and reward, and then also punishment, and like you're a bad kid. As I was telling you, Margot, the more I thought about it, when they would put me in detention, by 6th grade, some of the kids I was going to school with were gangbangers. One of them went on to, I think by freshman year, he did a bunch of bad things. And I remember him, and I remember associating with that and thinking, I guess this is where I belong, because this is where they keep putting me.
Right.
If nothing else, it really just confused the shit out of me in terms of like, what's going to happen next? Because I don't know why I'm impulsive. I don't even know that I'm impulsive. I would love to go back and talk to some of these teachers who were holding me after class, and they're so confused, and they're like, why did you do that?
Yeah.
And it's like, motherfucker, I don't know. You have the master's degree in education. Why don't you tell me? I'm not.
Right.
I don't know.
Right.
So I just was always, I didn't know what to expect.
Yeah. Yeah. This part, I'm just like super, super passionate about what you're saying, because it breaks my heart for all children that had this experience, right? You distracting the class was not you being like, fuck you, teacher, I don't give a shit about you.
Never.
Right? You weren't doing it intentionally to be disrespectful. You had other things going on in your life, right? Whether it's anxiety, it's inherited generational trauma, it's ADHD, whatever it is, led to these behaviors. And instead of grown-ups being like, hey, this kid is communicating they need extra support, it was like, no, you're the bad kid, and we're going to put you with dangerous individuals and make you think that's where you belong. Now, those other kids probably also needed extra support, not just being all lumped together. Right. But
it was a little much.
Yeah.
It really was. And then much. Also just the idea that one of the messages that came through as well was, it's just so disappointing that you're this kid and you're also this kid. Like, yeah. I still don't really know what I made of that, because what are you supposed to make of that kind of message?
Right. You're an evil, brilliant genius. Like what? Like
right. It's like, am I brilliant and
lucky
evil?
I didn't go the evil genius route.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a really good point.
Yeah. And the message is, when you're saying the story, I had so many different like memories pop up in my head. Like Margot and I both teach in schools, and I would go into kindergartens, right? Where I would come in, and the 5-year-olds would be like, that's the bad kid. And like already at 5, children get these labels, and then they, and then that's who I am. I'm the bad kid. Right. And just like, it's so much strength to be lumped as that, and then still decide, no, that's not who I am. I have to figure out who I am. This is confusing as shit. I'm misunderstood. Right. But what these people are saying to me doesn't mean that it's true.
Sure. And fortunately for me, I obviously did have positive influences in my life. But it's just that, growing up, that's where you spend most of your life. And that's the environment. That's what it was like growing up in the 80s and 90s for me.
Yeah. Same. Well, not the same, but yeah, we were products of the 80s and 90s too. So it's just, it's not unfamiliar, right? I remember just what Abby's saying about us as teachers now, but then just reflectively from our childhoods, like we've talked so many times about how often I remember being like, well, those kids go to that room all the time. So that means they're less smart than the kids in this room. Right. And those kids, they don't learn the same way as these kids. So that's why they're over there in this room. And it's like all children are being put in these labeled baskets and told, well, you don't conform. Right. And so we need to place you somewhere else. The normal rooms, quote unquote, is where everyone that conforms, it gets taught. And then here are these other spaces where the kids that are neurodiverse or, creative geniuses or whatever, misunderstood, have too much anxious energy and don't understand it. Right. It's like social emotional learning wasn't something that was heavily taught to us as products of the 80s and 90s. And when I say heavily, I'm being generous, right? These things were never taught to us.
No.
So I want to kind of piggyback on this a little bit. You had shared in our call that you had started seeing a counselor at around age 13. And then fast forwarding, when you became a young adult or in your mid 20s, you sought treatment for your ADHD and you had several doctors tell you like, hey, we can help you with this, but you also have massive depression and anxiety. And so we think we should treat these things first. And I love this part of our call. So if you can just share with our listeners a little bit about this time in your life.
So to preface that, because I've had this conversation with a bunch of people within the ADHD community and a lot of the feedback or even seen it expressed. And the consensus seems to be that this is the wrong way to do it, that ADHD gets passed off as depression and anxiety, and that's bad. In my experience, I don't think it was bad. I'm not prescribing that to anybody else, but I had a bunch of traumatic shit happen in my life. Before I was even 30. So I was severely clinically depressed. I really think that I'm not a therapist or a mental health clinician, but I think I was pretty depressed by the time I was like 11 years old. I remember it. I remember feeling like there's a big black hole inside me and I wasn't even, barely going through puberty. Yeah. So, I mean, this was a major problem. It was really messing up my life. And so talk therapy was really helpful. Making sense of what was going on in my head and my relationships with people was really helpful. Honestly, antidepressants, even though I really dislike pharmaceuticals in general, and particularly just for myself, I don't like the way it feels. I don't like the process of it. But when I needed it, I mean, it really helped me solve a lot of problems. And I remember even after I think 3 different clinicians, 3 different counselors told me the same thing. Hey, we can tell just from the affect of your voice, just from the way you describe the course of your life, like you're real depressed, you're real anxious. A lot of it came down to still, I think, just practicing mindfulness. One of the biggest breakthroughs I had was working with a counselor who, she didn't so much talk to me about ADHD. She was mostly teaching me specific mindfulness practices and meditation and acceptance. And like one of those particular breakthroughs was, there was a time when I was going through this whole ADHD moment where, I had no gas in my car. I was late. I didn't bring my wallet. My phone was about to die. So I'm screwed. I'm about to run out of gas so what happened was that because of the mindfulness training, I started hearing this voice that was saying all this terrible shit to me. And I remember I was so stunned that I was like, who the fuck is this? Fucking what? And why would I was mad.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh my God, that's a voice in my head. And then I started to recognize that this is something that spins up whenever I get into these situations. And it's clearly a voice that was partially borrowed from other places. And you know what? I shut it down like a health inspector going into a diner with roaches. I was like, nah, you're not going to talk to me like that.
Wow.
And that was literally about the end of that. I mean, obviously it happens, you know, we kind of kick ourselves when we do dumb things, but I don't know that, I mean, it's hard to say in hindsight, you know, I don't like to play all these like, you know, what would you do, this and that. But I really appreciate that a lot of this stuff got addressed. And then later on, I moved into, okay, so how do you manage ADHD and how do you set reminders and how do you organize your wardrobe better? That stuff is all cool, but I think sometimes you need, you know, you need a foundation, and I needed my foundation. I needed to have a better relationship with myself and be less anxious.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I love this. Because I totally agree with you. Like there's so many great like tidbits and ways to support yourself with ADHD and anxiety, but those things don't really work until you have that foundation. And some of that foundation is like the core beliefs and the way that you speak to yourself, and having that awareness and changing those bits before you can start like organizing your closet, right? Because otherwise that voice is going to keep telling us that we're a fuck up, and then we're just not going to organize the closet. And so I love that, like, right, you're getting to like the roots of it, to the core of it, before you can make the other change, before you can like, you build the foundation before you can like build the second level of the house, right? You need that foundation, and then you need the first floor, and then the second.
I will share with you that this is something that, I mean, I'm always kind of philosophically picking things apart. That's kind of part of what I do. But sometimes I do question, I get skeptical of what's really causing my ADHD, because I've definitely noticed that the more that I really started getting involved in stress response and calming myself down, that a lot of that stuff went out the window. It really honestly did. And I don't want to say that, you know, I cured myself of ADHD, especially because I'm also heading into 38. I mean, certain parts of the population do age out of ADHD. There's research on this. But mainly what I'm saying is that I did notice that a lot of these symptoms were essentially me being distracted internally from freaking out. And I mean, it happens from one microsecond to the next. And you might, I mean, you're lucky if you notice it in a lot of ways. And I mean, there's a reason to look at it from the other end. Going through the coaching training, there's a reason that they tell you, look, it's best practice not to be a therapist. And that if you recognize that someone has a massive amount of trauma, especially if they're saying the word over and over, they need to go see a clinician. There's a reason for that. And so even with my practice, it's like, I'm very cognizant of, okay, what is the underlying thing here? I can't diagnose you because that's not my job. But at the same time, it's really hard to help somebody with, how do I get my morning routine better so that I can get in my steps before I go to work, when they have all kinds of crazy unresolved stuff. And so I really appreciated my own path. I don't know about other people, but for me, it was really crucial.
Right. And what it sounds like with this one particular therapist was that they didn't so much care about the label, like, oh, we're going to treat your ADHD symptoms. They gave you tools to like calm your stress response, tools to support your well-being, tools to navigate when you notice like the voices and the negative self-talk coming up. And so it wasn't like, here, do this for your ADHD. It was like, here, let's support the whole person in front of me and give them like life skills to navigate the world in.
Well, that's something that I noticed right away when I really dove right into the ADHD world. My first experience with it, other than just being diagnosed and talking one-on-one with somebody, was I walked into the international conference on ADHD and was listening to, I mean, this is the summit of intelligence around this subject, more or less. I mean, there's researchers, there's clinicians, there's authors, coaches, and then, 500 people walking around a building who all are diagnosed with ADHD. that's the one thing that I noticed is that, oh, this is just stuff that's good for humans. Like very little of this, like you need that kind of touch when you work with, I think with someone that they understand the neurodivergent mind. It is very important. And also the neurodivergent experience. But also like one of the acronyms is MEDS, which medication can be replaced with meditation, but it goes, meditation or medication, exercise, diet, and sleep. Is that really unique to anybody? Is there anybody?
Right.
I mean, seriously. So a lot of this stuff that's ADHD management, yeah, it can get very particular, but a lot of it is being recognized as, okay, a lot of these people are high strung. A lot of these people are getting overwhelmed fast. And there's a number of different reasons for that. So yeah, I mean, I do think it's one of those things where you almost kind of can't go wrong. I mean, people want to be recognized that, hey, I have ADHD and I feel alone and I feel misunderstood. But ultimately, you're going to have to come back to the basics. You're going to have to get your sleep. You're going to have to stop eating garbage. You're going to, if you're really serious about improving your life.
Yeah, it's like the combination of mental and physical health, right? It's like these two things have to coexist together. Yes, we can nourish our bodies, but we also have to nourish our minds. Yes, we can nourish our minds, but we also have to properly nourish our bodies, right? And I had this moment when you were talking, and it's something that always comes up for me. I'm like, when I'm freaking out, when I'm angry, when I'm anxious, when I fucking hate the world, whatever's going on with me, usually 8 times out of 10, it's when was the last time I had some water? Like 8 times out of 10. And like, that's, when I started thinking like that all the time, I literally always have water like within a foot of my body. And it's made such a huge difference. So I want to actually keep on this and stick with asking you a little bit about how you experience anxiety in your mind and body and behaviors. Like, how does it show up for you physically?
I get really sweaty hands.
Yes.
We're big sweaty warriors here.
Okay, nice. So I've found my tribe there.
Yes.
In fact, I have a friend who's an ADHD coach, and once in a while we'll text each other just a picture of a sweaty palm, which to anybody else might seem incredibly disturbing, but it's like, oh yeah, bro. Me too.
Not to us. This makes a lot. Abby and I we send each other gifs and memes of just only things that the two of us we feel like truly understand. But everybody, right? Everybody has their thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a sweaty hand thing you wouldn't understand. But yeah, I mean, I remember years ago it was like, oh, you have hyperhidrosis, put this ointment on your hands, and it was like, that was effective. But yeah, that's one of the things that turns out when I looked into it, all the research is like, yeah, we're pretty clear on that. You're freaking out, like you're having a stress response. I mean, it could be, just a random genetic thing, but so there's that. Also, definitely breathing. That's always been something I've been very cognizant about, just as a lifelong martial artist. I mean, that's the basis of any kind of athletics for the most part. And so I'm always paying attention to my breath, and definitely with, it's just a correlation, it seems. I also mentioned when we talked earlier that even with certain strains of weed, I mean, being out here in Colorado, I've been able to explore this whole universe of different types. And it's like the ones that increase my anxiety, they inhibit my breathing. I've definitely noticed that, where it's almost like it goes from autopilot to manual, where I actually have to remember and tell myself to breathe. And after a while, I was like, I don't really like this. This is extremely not conducive to my life. So I've cut out a lot of that stuff, but that's because I noticed that, in other situations where I was panicked, and then in other situations where I kind of, induced my own panic. My breathing is all messed up. And that, there just seems to be a correlation. And then when I address that, anxiety gets better. Those would be the main ways physically, I would say. And then also just general hyperactivity. You know, I mean, I'm always on the go. I have a really hard time chilling out and doing, like, I see people chilling out and just watching a movie. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, you could be doing infinite things. So just, you know, don't do nothing. Do any of these infinite things. It takes a lot. It takes a lot for me to calm down. And even when I am chilling out, it's kind of a task for me. It's kind of like, okay, well, for the next 25 minutes, I'm going to do this meditation. So
it's on the schedule.
Yeah.
Yep, it's booked. It's So yeah, I mean, I think just any kind of you know, it just, everything's accelerated sometimes physically. That's one thing I've noticed. Now, obviously with the breathing, it's kind of decelerated, but obviously, you know, it's all connected. So that's kind of one of the things I've noticed, is that anytime I'm anxious, like physically things are just overstimulated, just going a little too hard, too fast.
Yeah. I love how you said about inducing your own panic, right? And I think even if it isn't weed, a lot of people, I'll speak for me with anxiety and ADHD, there are things externally that will induce my panic, right? Will cause my panic. And then there's me that can cause it. Even if it's not with weed, it's like the overthinking or the like difficult conversation that's going to happen. And then all of a sudden it like adds all this panic. And I just really like the way you said that, because yes, external factors can contribute to anxiety, but also we can contribute to our anxiety too. And so that's, when you were saying that, that's what came up for me, is just thinking about how we can contribute to our own panic.
Sure. Well, I mean, one of the things that was taught to me is that, like, I was talking to a friend who is actually an OR nurse. And so he has to calm people down. Yeah. Sometimes they wake up and they're like, ah! And they don't know where they are and what's going on. And one of the things he's told me about panic attacks and people freaking out is that you got to surrender. But I have noticed that through that process, sometimes I've learned that in surrendering, it's also kind of a form of accountability. And I'm big on accountability. Like, I appreciate that there are people out there who are fighting these battles to get accommodations and change the world and change politics and stuff like that. But at the same time, I mean, when you're talking about your body, I mean, you have a lot of control, and you have a lot of control of your external experience. And so, yeah, I couldn't help but notice that, you know, if I can be accountable for my breath and like any kind of things that are coming into my world that are causing me anxiety, the best things I can do is, you know, at least try to change it.
Yeah.
Right. Get that agency piece. So you've shared, I know, it's just, if only I could just tell myself to help myself. I have the power. I can have some of the power sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
Not easy, but sometimes necessary. So you've shared a lot about some of your go-to strategies for coping. You talked about talk therapy, speaking through the losses in your life, and family trauma, processing deaths in your family, and ADHD coaches and the like. But in our call, you shared so much about your work as an artist and also receiving art therapy and how life-changing that's been for you to navigate your anxiety and more. So please share with us more about that.
Sure. By the way, I don't think I mentioned in this about, I mean, I think it is an important part to share, and I like to share it for anybody else who's going through it. I mean, I lost my parents by a very early age. Both of them were suddenly diagnosed with cancer. And then, I mean, it was like out of a TV show. It was like doctors are lining up in the room and they're telling you got 2 months and you get your affairs in order. That happened with both of my parents in front of me, and it was very unexpected. So, I mean, you talk about anxiety inducing in terms of like your structure, your family structure, your sense of being, I mean, I can't go home in a way, you know what I mean? There's no home to go to. So, which brings me to, the creative work and the art therapy. So I'll start with the art therapy. Just for time's sake, it's like, one of the ways I think that's been really helpful is that it's been a lot of identifying these different voices. We all have different roles and different voices. And initially, like I shared the story about, and I realized that there's this voice that was berating me and insulting me. And I kind of identified that initially as, oh, well, that's just, the difference between, okay, there's your mind and your thoughts. And then there's the other part of you that whatever you want to call it, your witness, your immortal soul, but they're not necessarily the same thing. But then as I explored through with this person guiding me, started identifying different voices. Particularly, it seems to me that I have this voice that kicks in when it's time to be more aggressive about life, when it's time to change my surroundings, when it's time to call myself out on my own bullshit. There's another voice that is more soothing, and really it's come down to kind of like a mother-father type of voice. And this is also a composite of different voices. So it's not just my biological parents, but I have borrowed different voices from different role models. So for instance, the more male voice is really a combination of my dad, mentors, I had a few particular martial arts instructors who really, took me under their wing. And there are different ones too. Obviously when you like we mentioned weed, like when you're altering your state and you're altering the voices in your head, that one sometimes is particular. So the therapy has involved personifying those. And I've been drawing since I was a fetus. So I just got right to it and I just started drawing these people. And I think what is really helpful about that is that you look at any program, like for instance, a 12-step program, what do they tell you to do? You better find a higher power. And that's part of my higher power is associating with these different people that can be with me, even in my time of need, even when I'm completely alone. It's been really therapeutic to just draw upon all these experiences and, the fact that these people love me and the fact that, that's a timeless thing. And it just, the higher power thing, if you really want to break it down, it's just like, okay, if you can get yourself into a mindset, you're bigger than this thing, then you can overcome it. So that has been, I won't talk too much about my creative career because it's just been so all over the place. I mean, that's the ADHD part. I mean, it is definitely who I am, and I'm really proud of all the things I've done, from murals to making comics and animations, and even the content that I do for this kind of work that I'm doing, reaching out to ADHDers and people struggling with mental health. That's all creative work to me. At this point, all of those boundaries just kind of disappear. It's all just a creative outlet. But I'm very lucky that I was led and had these people appear in my life who recognized that and said, oh, well, you draw all the fucking time? Well, let's take advantage of that. And let's use your strengths and just dive into that. And this has been a pretty transformative thing.
Wow. Yeah. I love this because before, when you're talking about therapy, you talked about talk therapy and how that was really helpful. But there's this piece to it. And when I've gone to therapy, I've never done art therapy, but I remember I went to a coaching program once and they had us draw our fears around certain things. And to be able to, and I am a terrible artist, so I'm not good, but that's okay. I understand we're all great in our own way in art, but for me, it was about the exploration. It was like that first moment where it was like, oh, I can put these feelings, I can put these thoughts, and I can allow it to be expressed in a different way than just my mouth. Right. And to see it and see that fear, for me, it allowed me to have a lot more compassion for myself and compassion for like the fear. Right. And so that's kind of what I'm hearing, is that when you take the time to, one, have the awareness of the voices and hear how, oh, this one sounds like a mentor, or this one sounds like from my childhood, or this was, the punishing teacher. Right. And then like being able to like see it, then it's like another step of befriending them, or befriending yourself, or knowing which ones are helpful in which situations. Like there's so many different ways I see this being of support, but I love the personifying them, because it kind of makes them obviously a little bit more human. And then we might be able to have a little bit more understanding or compassion with them, rather than just like beating ourselves up.
It's way less scary.
Yes.
It's just way less scary when those emotions show up, because it's like, what do we fear? We fear the unknown. Mm-hmm. And then, familiarizing yourself. It's like, and look, I mean, obviously it takes action, it takes practice. I mean, I think a lot of us have, heard of this poem by Rumi, where he invites you to invite your emotions and have a meal with them and get to know them.
Yeah.
And I came across that many years ago, but it was a concept, and I was like, well, that sounds cool. But yeah, it was really helpful to really take the action and make the investment to go through the process. And then, it just proved to be really rewarding. And it's way less scary now to be like, oh, hey, I guess you're showing up now. Fear and sweaty hands and fear of, nuclear war or whatever it is. Like, sometimes it gets particular, but I find that sometimes the more particular you can get, it's more familiar, and it's a lot less freaky.
Yeah, I love that. Turning the concept into action. It's just, it feels so quantifiable when you say it like that. So I'm going to hold on to that one. All right. So Dominic, you can go back in time and speak to a younger version of yourself. What kind of advice would you offer?
I've been thinking about this, and this is my reaction anytime people ask me a question like this, because it's so hard for me to see things this way. So what I'm going to say is that I don't know if I would. I think if anything, I might, like if I was standing in front of my younger self, I might just give them a certain kind of look. That's just like, I get you. Yeah. And the reason I say that is because I try to accept who I am. And I try to accept this path, because I found that, you resist things and you suffer. Particularly when it comes to stuff that you can't do shit about.
Yeah.
So I think I would probably just try to appreciate this person. And, if anything, maybe I would tell them, like, I understand you, or I get you. But I would kind of do the Back to the Future thing and not meddle too much, because it's like, you don't want to mess up the time continuum.
Yes. Oh my gosh, so good.
Yeah.
It's so good. I love that so much. I'm trying to envision the look. It's like only a visual artist would say, I'm gonna just give my former self a look, and then he'll just know. He'll know.
I don't even know what it would be, but I might do.
Well, we won't put you on the spot, and this is audio media anyway, so it'd be useless. All right. So final question before we get into some lightning round fun.
Yeah.
What does being an anxiety warrior mean to you?
I'm so glad you asked, because this is a big one for me. I have this theory that the more people are integrating with technology and with virtual realities, that the more they're susceptible, and that they're honestly being attacked in terms of their stress response. I really do think that it's making the world more fucked up, and that there are a ton of people out there who are really vigilant about certain things, and really they're terrified. Really they're not aware of. I mean, just go watch The Social Network. They're breaking it down. They've been telling us since a long time ago, since before Facebook even blew up to where it is, that they figured out that if they scare you, they can sell you better. If they scare you, they can, if they bring out your negative reactions, those actually travel faster neurologically, and so you get a quicker response, you get a quicker click. And so I have this theory that if you can connect people with themselves better, you get less pissed off people. You get people who are more grounded, not just for the sake of being more grounded, but for the sake of just having a more peaceful and sensible world. I mean, I'm not trying to necessarily like achieve world peace with what I'm doing, but sometimes I kind of do see this like whole Star Wars battle playing out in the virtual world, where it's like, it's just, you can push people's buttons 24/7. And I mean, we're pushing buttons, but we don't realize that they're pushing our buttons. We got buttons and they know it. And a lot of times they know it better than we do. So it occurred to me a couple of years ago that, okay, ADHD is a thing. It's very important to me. I'm connected to this community, but also particularly following kind of footsteps of, like, for instance, Dr. Andrew Huberman, who is out there doing a lot of amazing work, teaching people about how to ground themselves and how to understand what's happening to them as it's happening to them, which I think is a huge component. Like, when you understand what's happening to you neurologically, it's way less scary and you're way less reactionary. I think that the more I can raise awareness about that, and then I can help people with tools to be less overwhelmed, that they'll be a lot more prepared for the world that we're heading into and that we're already in. And I don't know, maybe make the world a little bit better.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah.
Yeah,
it's so true. It's like, with more awareness and self-understanding and connection to self, right? It makes the world a little bit of a better place, person by person, and they have more understanding.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Yes. It's always the goal. And I love that your definition of anxiety warrior is like an act of service in a way, right? It's like, it's about you, but it's also about what's past you. It's about the people in your community, the people that get to be coached by you, that get to enjoy your comics, right? That you had made popular back in 2019, when you weren't sure if like anyone would even give a shit about ADHD comics. Yeah. And look at how they blew up, and then you found that need, right? So like, being able to be of service is also, I think, something that a lot of the people we talk to share.
Yeah.
Awesome.
All right. It's time for some fun. Are you ready for lightning round? Okay. So Abby and I are going to go back and forth. We're each going to ask you a fun get to know Dominic type question.
Okay.
And you don't have to answer too quickly. You can take a pause, take a deep breath, whatever feels good. Come up with your answer in your own time, and we'll be ready to receive it. All right. So Abby, who's going first?
I can go first.
Ooh, I'm proud of you, girl.
Yeah.
All right, let's do it.
Okay. I'm making a big assumption here.
Okay.
Have you ever read comic books? Any type of comic books?
Those were my nursery rhymes, practically. I grew up on superheroes and comics, for sure.
Okay, so if you could live a day as a character in one comic book, who would it be?
For some reason, Silver Surfer's coming to mind. I was never like crazy into Silver Surfer, but the fact that this guy is just the most free individual in the cosmos, there's nothing that can stop him. He jumps on his surfboard. He's like, oh, look, there's a cosmic windstorm. I guess I'll just surf through it and just, yeah, I mean, the guy's unstoppable. He's indestructible, but mostly like, he's free to go anywhere he wants as fast as he wants. That'd be kind of cool.
Yeah.
That does
All
sound
right.
cool. Nothing
Yeah.
better than freedom.
Yeah.
I
Facts.
mean, right? And taking those risks when you know that you're probably safe because you're in some kind of
It's probably an
world.
amazing, yeah. Well, and it's probably, I mean, he gets to really take the scenic route, going through, just plowing through a whole galaxy. So that'd be kind of interesting.
The scenic route. All right, love it. Okay, so I know that you said you were big into mixed martial arts, and I know you work for an MMA news site.
Mhm.
So if you, and I know maybe you are, but if you were like a big time MMA fighter, what would be your entrance song?
Yes.
And then maybe could you like sing a little bit of it for us?
Okay. This is gonna sound so stupid to anybody who doesn't know the song, which most people don't, but it's called Dead Guy by Ministry, which is an industrial band from the 90s. And yeah, it's just people, like, the lights would go out and they would just hear dun, 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 dun. Or no, I'm singing that's Walk. Yeah, dun, 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 dun. So it's just the heaviest, crunchiest. Yeah, I'm feeling it now. Like,
Yes.
Are you feeling afraid to face me in the cage now?
Terrified.
Terrified.
I always knew that would be just the hardest, like, coolest entrance song ever.
I love it. We'll have everyone, warriors, everyone's job is to jump on your favorite music app and find a song.
Yeah, it's so good.
Awesome.
Okay, so I'm gonna kind of riff off of this a little bit.
Yeah.
So I know MMA is not like wrestling. I very much know that, but I'm going to combine the two and say, like,
I like wrestling too.
Okay. What would be your wrestler MMA name? You know, like,
ooh, yeah, like Dominic the something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Rock Johnson. You know, we got the Rock, Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Let's see. I don't know if I've thought about this one. I think it's probably got to have an alliteration, because those are always good. So I don't know. It might be like Dopamine Dom. Like that.
No, Edric, Dopamine Dom.
Let's raise up the dopamines. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So good. Oh my gosh. I love that.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. It's so good. So good. And yeah, I was going to say it needs the alliteration. I'm heavy into alliteration. So extra love, extra points. All right.
Heck yeah.
Okay. Let's see. What reality TV show would you really thrive on?
Ooh.
I haven't watched a ton of them, but I think there's a good chance that I would actually, let me think. If there was a lower, like, amateur level of like a Hell's Kitchen, I have actually, in my anxiety warrior journey, really acclimated myself to difficult people, to the point where, and I'm a huge Gordon Ramsay fan. So I think I would love to get screamed at by Gordon Ramsay.
Yes.
I would be laughing so hard, and I do love to cook. So it would
awesome.
It would be like a huge thing to be able to I would want him to yell at me, and then I would want to have a breakthrough, and then he's like, this is incredible, the flavors are just balanced, and like, yeah, that'd be very rewarding.
I'm picturing that like went viral, like video or meme or whatever. It's like he's holding two pieces of bread around a woman's head or a guy's head. He says, you're an idiot sandwich.
I would be so honored if you turned me into an idiot sandwich.
But then you'd bring it back around and he'd see your incredible culinary genius.
Yeah, and then he'd be like, you're a genius sandwich, and then he would do the same thing.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
So
okay. Now I'm gonna riff on this one too. So so you're on the show and you've like won. He sees you're a genius sandwich. You have won. You feel all this joy.
Mm-hmm.
What is if joy was personified, if joy was into a sound, what would the sound of joy be as you're winning this after he's yelled at you and you've redeemed yourself and all of that?
Probably something like that. Probably me just laughing uncontrollably. Like, probably, yeah. Because that's my favorite thing to do in the world, is just laugh my fucking ass off. So, yeah. Just
Perfect.
Go back to any part where I'm laughing really hard in this podcast, and that would be
That would be it.
No, this has to stay in. You saying go back to find you laughing on this part. This is the best part.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Okay,
Yeah.
do I have one more?
You have
I
one
don't know.
more.
I have one more.
Yeah.
Okay.
My final question.
Hmm.
What's one thing about you that you would consider to be super dorky?
There's so many.
The one that stands out, like maybe would surprise
musical
people.
choices. Oh my God. A long time ago, even though I was kind of a little hoodlum when I was like a teenager, I had really weird friends. Like, we were like hoodlum nerdy kids, and like we were kind of like hackers and stuff like that at times. And so like we were into such weird things that didn't make any sense. Yanni was one of them. You know what I'm talking about? The Greek guy who makes
we know
music.
Yanni.
For anyone who doesn't know, he's in like the Four Horsemen of like horrible new age music, John Tesh, and like so I actually met that guy and got his autograph.
You met Yanni?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. You're like, oh yeah, I met Yanni.
Well, it was, I mean, I had to. And then I went to his concert with my girlfriend at the time, and then him with his like Greek swarthiness, he was like, "You are a beautiful couple." And then that was a big highlight in my life. But awesome. I got
Perfect.
super nerdy musical tastes, and yeah, that's one of them. I like Yanni. You can fight me if you want. I'm a fan.
Love it.
Dopamine Dominic in the ring fighting for his love of Yanni.
Yeah, that would be
maybe that'll be your exit song when you win the fight. Your exit song will be Yanni.
Yeah, if they were like, yeah, we can't get the license to that Ministry song, I'd be like, well, can you get Marching Season by Yanni? Because I'll do that.
There you go. You have to have a backup song. Everyone needs All right. Thank you so much. This was such a blast. We love lightning round. It's literally the best. Okay, so before we let you go,
yes,
do you have a win of the week for us?
I do. I had a really difficult conversation this week. I actually had several of them. That it's not just my win of the week. I mean, this is like bringing closure to years of hard feelings and confusion. And I really enjoyed it because I'm kind of in the business of that lately. Since I've really had some gains with anxiety and with conflict and fear of conflict, I'm really enjoying talking to people's souls and letting them know that, like, nah, I'm here and we're going to talk about this. And it ended up going amazingly. I mean, it was because I was able to express, exactly what I was pissed off about and all the stuff that was bothering me, and just be totally vulnerable about it. I didn't seek to hurt this person. Yeah. And so like it really restored this relationship, and I got to, and then also they admitted I was right, so that was kind of cool. But yeah. Bonus. Yeah, super icing on the cake, but it was that was awesome. I really that was really rewarding to have that difficult conversation, and then on top of that, like, the response was great.
That's amazing. That's a huge win.
Yeah.
That's huge.
I think so.
That's a massive one. I mean, we like to say that all wins are huge wins, even the small ones, but that one's
Oh my gosh. We all know what it's like to like avoid a difficult conversation. And we all know like when we actually have to give voice and have that conversation, like what a relief, right?
Like even if it doesn't go our way, right? What a relief to just have it over with.
Yes. It feels good.
Yeah. Oh, amazing. Thank you so much, Dominic, for being with us today. It was such a joy.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me. I love doing stuff like this. I love what you're doing. I hope people enjoy it.
We know they will. We know they will. We have a wonderful warrior fam, and it's nothing but love in our corner. In our corner, back to the MMA. All right. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Oh my gosh. Such a great chat.
Yeah.
So good. It's like every time we listen to our conversations with our guests, I just feel warm and supported and inspired and empowered all over again. Yeah. So some takeaways from this conversation with Dominic. What came up for you?
Yeah. The first thing that really stuck out, and I didn't ask a follow-up question during the episode, during our podcast, but he talks about how his father had achieved the American dream. And my takeaway in that, when he shared that, was just like, on the outside, things might look so good, but we never know what's going on someone's insides. And his dad was suffering. And, when I think of the American dream, I don't think of suffering. and I think we have to rethink the American dream in general. But for me, that is really what stuck out, because in the 50s, right, having a job, having a family, having a house, like having a white picket fence was the American dream. And so that was my takeaway, is just like, things might always look, picturesque on the outside, but we really never know what's happening on the inside.
Yeah, it's just so well said. I feel like so much of that part of the conversation where Dominic shared about his relationship to his father, his grandfather, his father's relationship to his grandfather, and just all of the ways that he learned to take in the world around him and how that really impacted, his own lived experience. Right. And he grew up feeling very misunderstood, and that obviously, and he was severely punished for things that he wasn't really fully told what he was doing wrong. Or, I mean, I say wrong, that's not even the right word, right? It's just like, what was he doing even to land him in so much trouble all the time? And it was like, his teachers weren't recognizing in him that he was creative and smart and a prodigy. And how else is a child supposed to interpret, right, their genius if they're not being given the opportunity to share it and to have it be guided in a way? And I feel like it was reminiscent of our conversation with Jesse Israel about like feeling a little bit misunderstood and being a leader, being a creative genius, and not having that be kind of nourished in those formative years. So that really stood out to me. And I think my takeaway from that is just like, for all the grownups out there, how the way that we speak to children, the way that we interact with them, the way that we pay attention to ourselves and care for ourselves is going to have an impact on the kids around us, and in ways we may not even know about for years to come. Right. Yeah. When just to, riff off of what you're saying, the other part of it is in him feeling misunderstood and in him being punished for just being a human being. He didn't know what he didn't know. That for some reason, like, who came up with the brilliant idea of all the children that are experiencing, behavior challenges get put in the same room together? Because what are they learning from each other? Right. Like, and there's actually like a lot of research about why that is a problem. Dr. Bruce Perry talks about it in, I think, his book, The Boy Who Was Raised as a Dog. My takeaway is, it just really says something about like who you surround yourself with, and what you learn by the people you surround yourself with. Right. And for him, what he said was he was lucky enough to have healthy, serving relationships outside of school. Yeah.
And that is what really helped him. And so, you know, the other part in that takeaway is just like how important relationships are in helping people stay on the like quote unquote right path. Because had he only been with, you know, a bunch of other kids with challenging behavior that they didn't understand what they were doing wrong, right? And he didn't have these other strong supports of adult support out there. Like, you know, again, who knows? And it's not worth really thinking that, but it really just says how important all human beings are in showing up and having relationships with others.
Yes, totally. Outside of your immediate too, right?
Mm-hmm.
How beneficial it can be to have those outside sources of support, outside of your classroom of kids, your teachers, your family. You know, I really loved how Dominic was so self-curious. I feel like this concept came up so often throughout our conversation. It just seemed like, especially when he started going to therapy and learning more about his ADHD and his anxiety and depression, and he was given very concrete, tangible mindfulness-based practices and tools to try. You know, something he brought up in our call that unfortunately we didn't really get to in the interview was he shared a little bit about acceptance and commitment therapy and had very specific and specialized mindfulness practices. And he found that hugely beneficial. But I just feel like the overall takeaway is that he just seemed so keen to keep learning about his own experience. And then so he could serve other people, create more anxiety warriors, as opposed to just people who are living in the world with anxiety or living in the world with depression, living in the world with ADHD, creating that space where like, okay, we can have agency over this. We can work on it together. I understand your lived experience. I had that same lived experience, and I can help validate for you and help you see through it.
Yeah. It's so important. I really, you know, off of that, I really appreciated how he talked about like building that strong foundation and how it's life skills. It's not skills for people with ADHD. It's not skills for people with depression. It's not skills for people with anxiety. These are like basic life skills of understanding yourself and understanding that not every thought is true, and understanding, you know, how to accept yourself. That everyone can benefit from. And it kind of ties into, you know, our episode with Sammy when she was talking about DBT, right? Therapy is just not for people who need help, right? It can be a proactive approach when you're feeling good to have the tools when you're not feeling good, which bringing it back to our episode with Darius, right?
And Melissa too.
And Melissa, right.
Yeah,
and so,
totally.
I appreciated that strong foundation piece that you can build upon. And then, you know, the last thing that I'll just say, which is more of a reflection than a takeaway, but I really value what he said. And he mentioned that, you know, in the coaching world, sometimes people will talk about trauma. And he alluded to how in coaching, we're not therapists. In coaching, our role is to coach, and that if someone says a lot about trauma, we are not to pretend that we know anything about trauma, even if we've read about it. Like if we're not a therapist, know your role. And I really just value him saying that, because in the wellness world, people that are coaching or people that are mindfulness teachers, or we might get stuck wanting to be of service and wanting to like help this person in front of us, even though it's not our role, even though it's not our job, even though we're not qualified. And I really, really appreciate that he pointed that piece out, because it's just so important to know what hat are you wearing, you know, and if someone needs extra support, there's nothing wrong with you for not being able to help them. You just don't have the, you know, the degree, or you don't have the
educational background.
Yeah. And,
totally.
And I just think that needs to continually be spoken about in the wellness world, is know your role, know your hat that you're wearing, and don't try to put on a hat that you've never worn before, because even though you want to be of service, you might actually be doing more harm than good.
Oh my gosh. Yes. So well said. That's reminding me of like our selling episode, right? Just like learning how to sell with integrity, make sure that you're setting up appropriate expectations for your clients, the people that you're hoping to help. And the way you put that at the end was just so perfect. It's like you could be doing more harm than you realize simply by talking about something you don't know. And it may be an act of practice for you, right? To let go of not knowing everything. Right. And so just some reflection there. My final takeaway is just, I loved hearing about art therapy and how so many of the warriors we've spoken to, and I think ourselves included, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, have just found the ways in which we need the most support. Right. And I find that creative outlets can be extremely helpful and they do not get enough attention, I think. And so I loved that not only was this person a professional artist, but he also, even as a professional artist, is taking art therapy, which is very, very different from, it's like saying for a therapist that goes and sees their own therapist, right? It's like, you don't have all the answers. Just because you work in a medium doesn't mean you know how to therapize yourself through it and how to use it as a tool for coping.
Yeah.
And so I loved that he was able to take something that he's so passionate about in his work and also translate that into something that's teaching him and can be used as a form of coping and therapy. And I think that it's just what the takeaway I think is just that I want to dive deeper into more creative outlets for myself.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that, hearing that from Dominic, because I think that so many of us put ourselves into boxes of who we are and who we should be and what we're good at and what we shouldn't be dabbling in. And it's like, I feel like you had mentioned this in a previous episode. It's like, I did watercolors and did art because it was fun and it made me feel good. And it's like, I need to let go of like, I'm not a great artist, but I can still color and paint and try things out and fuck it up. And who cares? Right. And just let go of the perfectionist piece. So I love that part. So I think that was my final takeaway.
I love that. I mean, right. I mean, the intention in the art could be practicing, like letting go of perfection while you're doing the watercoloring or,
I used to love doing it with my students.
Yeah.
When it didn't matter. I was just hanging out with my 4 and 5-year-olds and we were just painting, and it didn't, right. It's like, I need to get back to that space and use it as a form of coping.
Right. Right. And there's so many different, like it can be used as coping or it can be used as like a focus practice. I know that for me, someone with ADHD, I've used it as a way where like I'll coloring books. Notice when my mind wanders, bring it back to the coloring book, or it can be like soothing. Like I made watercolor, like heart cards for people, and it brought me joy making the card, but it also brought me joy giving it to someone else. Right. So there's so many different ways to enjoy creating stuff.
So true.
Yeah.
So true. Oh, this was such a great conversation. Warriors, we hope you loved it as much as we loved having it and re-listening to it. Thank you so much for being here with us. We love you so, so much. And we'd love to hear from you. Find us on Instagram. You can find us at Anxiety Warriors Podcast. Connect with us over there. Lots of fun stuff always going on every day. If you are interested in reaching out for any reason, you can hit us up on email. We're at anxietywarriorspodcast@gmail.com. Let us know your wins of the week. If you have topic ideas that you'd love for us to explore, please share so we can, consider them and add them to our list possibly. And if you think you'd be an awesome fit as a guest on our show, we'd love to meet you, connect with you, and help amplify your very important anxiety journey.
Yes.
And warriors, if you're listening, which we know you are, on a telephone device or a computer device or an iPad or something of the like, you will please, it would mean so much if you took 2 seconds and smashed a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Leave us a review over on Apple if that's where you listen. If there's a place for you to leave a rating or review wherever you're listening, just go ahead and do that for us, please, so we can keep growing our warrior fam. We are also on YouTube. Look us up, Anxiety Warriors Podcast. All of these episodes are plugged in over there now, thanks to the one and only Abby, Rockstar Abby, busting her ass over there, getting all the episodes in. And if you would love some Anxiety Warriors merch for the warrior in your life or for yourself or both, preferably, you deserve something too, you can jump on our show notes and check out our link for Threadless, where you can pick up some Anxiety Warriors merch. We got mugs and hoodies and blankets and a lot of fun stuff, actually.
Yes.
It's like more than just clothing, which I love.
Yes. Get yourself a nice throw.
Very, you sounded very like grandma. Get yourself a nice throw. It's very New York too.
Warm
Very New
yourself
York grandma.
up.
Grab a mug for your coffee. Okay, this is off the rails officially. We love you so much, warriors. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you all so much for going on this journey with us. We're so grateful y'all are here.
Till next time.